I'm so sorry. I meant to, in my introduction, tell you that I plan to talk about last month, and then books, decks, and then specific creative liberation now reflections, and then plans for next month. Okay. Hello there, beautiful humans. Melinda Joy, Crossroads Storyteller here with another. It is my second video in my Creative Liberation Now, or alternatively, Creative Liberation Network deck deep dive challenge. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you perhaps would enjoy watching my first video where I explain my relationship to this deck and why I am doing this challenge. But the short version of it is I am pulling at least one card every day until the deck gets published. So if you would like to watch me do that, if you want the inside scoop of how that's going for me, you will want to subscribe so that you can catch my next couple videos. And of course, by next couple, I mean however long it takes to manifest this deck into the world, because obviously I have a copy, but from what I understand, only 100 people in the whole world have a copy. So yeah, let's fix that. Let's make it more available. Also, you can definitely like this video, because that helps me and the algorithm and all the other humans who want to see this deck but don't know that they want to see this deck, and want to see the series but don't know that they want to see the series. You can help them. Okay, let's get into it. So last month I was like, oh, I have been studying Tarot de Marseille, and I've been studying or reviewing my 22 teachings material, my from the tarot school through 22 teachings, and I'm exploring this thing and that thing and all these things, but now I'm gonna also add creative liberation now. Well, that didn't work out quite so well, and so I did a lot of paring down this month. So no more Tarot de Marseille studies, no more reviewing 22 teachings, tarot school studies, whatever else I said I was doing. Everything else has been put on pause or stop. I mean, pause is more like it, because I can't stay away. I must study it all. I must know it all, because I am a know-it-all. Okay, so that's not what I was saying. What was I saying? That life got a little bit difficult. We decided to rearrange our sleeping situation so that the toddler could get more intimate time with me, and that resulted in less sleep for me. And I'm so grateful that I have the lifestyle that makes it so that I can choose to be sleepy and choose to take naps every day to make up for it, so that I get to choose to be with my sweet toddler, who needs just as much love as my baby, even though she's probably not getting as much as my baby right now. So yes, so stoked to love on her, but that drastically impacted my capacity for studying other materials. And so yeah, got really focused on creative liberation now, which is totally fine. And when I started also, I thought I would for sure that the Creative Liberation Now deck would always be buddies with this GaiaStar Codex, Seeds of a Turned On World. And these decks go fantastically together, but I think I might. So last time I said that these would always go together and that I would bring in decks around these decks, but I think what's going to happen instead is this is the focus, obviously, but it's going to be the sole focus, and then this is just going to be another deck that comes in and out of rotation. And I will talk more about that when I get to decks. Oh, I'm so sorry. I meant to, in my introduction, tell you that I plan to talk about last month, and then books, decks, and then specific Creative Liberation Now reflections, and then plans for next month. Okay, so let's keep going. So yes, all that to say, Creative Liberation Now is top priority. So, some of the books I read this month. I had told you that I was going to be exploring the Chicken Qabbalah, in addition to Raising Free People. So this book, in addition to Free to Learn, the book Free to Learn by Peter Gray, I believe, these two books have been my ultimate favorite books regarding parenting and education. And Akilah did a really good job of helping me see that unschooling is a process. It's not a philosophy. I mean, you can make it the name of your philosophy if you want to, but the way I'm seeing it now that I've read this book is unschooling is a sort of section of our lives where we get to decolonize from the colonial education system that is currently our norm, and that the alternative education system is not an unschooling system, it's a self-directed study system or a student-directed education program. And that is not only super helpful for my noggin and the way I'm thinking about my children and their education, both the one that I give them every single day, moment to moment, as well as the official education that they're going to receive at some point. And yeah, just super, super supportive. This book also has, this author has a podcast. I don't remember the name of the podcast off the top of my head, but I'll include it in my show notes or my content page or whatever it's called, in addition to everything I reference, because I want you to have access to everything in case you like anything you see. I want you to be able to find it yourself. So I'll include her podcast when I include this book. So just find the book and you'll find the podcast. But in addition to this podcast that I have not yet listened to, that I intend to listen to very shortly, since I have recently finished this book, is she also provides all sorts of resources. This is, she does something called mad question asking. So these are some mad questions that you can ask yourself. I have a napkin here so that my hubby can read it, because hubby doesn't really read books, but if I'm read these 3 pages, hubby can usually manage that. In addition to, here's a whole bunch of resources to follow up on, right? I've dog-eared the side of it so that I can come back. See, here's Peter Gray, so many Peter Gray places. Children teach themselves to read. I think that's where I'm going to start. That sounds so interesting. I want to know how children teach themselves to read and how much they don't need me to teach them. Yes, anyways, unschooling and self-directed learning, mad cool. So stoked to have found it before my children entered the education system. But it's never too late. If you have children you want to, older children that you want to take out of the traditional education in order to give them more freedom to learn their natural ways, you can still do that. And this book is a great place to begin that process, as well as free to learn. So, the other book I said I was going to read was Chicken Qabbalah. And, y'all, I really appreciate Milo Duquette's humor, but I was not finding that book funny. It was a little bit too ridiculous and not enough seriousness. Maybe, I got through the part where he talks about all of the Hebrew letters, which was difficult for me because, y'all, I studied Hebrew for years in school. So, like, I know my Hebrew, and he dumbed it down really far, which is fine because that's the point of the book, is to be hella freaking accessible. But I was, like, a little bit fried after that anyways, because I really care about Hebrew and the Hebrew letters and their metaphysical, mystical, esoteric associations, and I didn't feel like they were justly represented. And then the next chapter was about the Yod He Vav He, YHVH, or like Yahweh name of God, and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I put the book down. It was clearly not the right time to read it, if it ever is the right time for me to read it. And so I explored Paul Foster Case's tarot book. I explored Waite's Pictoral Key to the Tarot, and I needed something. Y'all, life is hard right now. I don't need to be making my study, like, information exploration part of my life that is my, like, exclusive, like, outlet that's exclusively for me. I don't need to be making that more difficult for myself right now. It's supposed to be enjoyable right now. No stretching required. I'm already stretching everywhere else in my life. So I found a book that made me feel good. And I've started reading Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom, a tarot journey of self-awareness to self-awareness. And this is, you know, really, it's like a really important tarot book that I hadn't read yet. So I have pulled it out, and what was so cool was in chapter 1, she pulls these 4 cards to talk about how the Fool and the World card are sort of like the bookends to the major arcana and what that means, like their esoteric meaning, and you know, all of this insight looking at the Fool and the World, which is super cool. And I took as a sign that I was going in the right direction finally, because the Creative Liberation Now deck has extra Fools and extra universes, or what they call the multiverse or multiverses, instead of the World card or the Universe card, or etc. So yeah, that felt like a good sign. I've been exploring this book. I'm here, let's see, how far along am I? I'm not super far. I'm on page 45 with the Empress. Here's my BOTA, Builders of the Adytum bookmark. And so there's plenty of this book left to read, so I'm gonna keep reading this book, and then I think I'm going to try to I'm going to try to be reading 2 books at all times, because I can't just read one book. And when I'm not postpartum, I like to have like 5 to 10 books that I'm reading at one time, but I can't keep track of that all right now because life is hard. So I'm going to focus on 2 books. and I'm gonna see how it feels to have a book on tarot or spirituality or Jungian psychology or any of those, that kind of thing, and then one book for like political, social, radical kinds of philosophies and ways of being. And so and part of that is because I see this deck as both of those qualities, the like esoteric, spiritual, psychological side, as well as this social, political, radical philosophy side. And so since the Creative Liberation Now deck is my current focus, that's how the reading is going to weave in. And the tarot book I already showed you for this next month, and the book that I'm going to be reading for the political social one is Joyful Toddlers, because I see parenting as my political revolution, my social revolution. And oh man, that book is hard to enact, because I have been socialized to see my toddler as a problem instead of a little being who is becoming. And the Joyful Toddler book helps me see my child as a becoming person instead of a problem person. But it's one thing to read a book and understand it. It's another thing to read a book and retain it. It is an entirely different thing to read a book, understand it, retain it, and act on it. So I'm going to reread Joyful Toddlers so that I can get better at acting out all of the things that help support my toddler. Okay, next on the list. So the decks that I used beyond my deep dive was the Spacious Tarot, and I used that for a reading for a friend. I used the Wiser Tarot for a reading for a friend, and I used the Noble Marseille to predict a TV show. I like to practice predictions with TV shows and like novels and things like that, because it gives me a immediate response that I can judge according to my prediction. So it helps me with my predictive reading. Now, more about the Creative Liberation Now deck. So, the cards I pulled this month. I pulled, I think, 5 fire cards. So we've got Visionary Dreamer, which is fun. I got a lot of, this is in place of the knights, or the princes. I also got Builder Organizer of Fire, which is instead of the queen. And then I got the Birth of Fire, or Ace of Fire, and Second Fire, and Fourth Fire. And of all these decks, the one that of all of these cards, the one that I really enjoyed the most was this Builder Organizer of Fire. Look at this image. She's got a leopard and a black cat and lions and this sphinx thing that's coming out. The saying for this card is something about all of my demons are my angels. I am sexy, confident, and something else. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant affirmation. But the guidebook associates this card with the Queen of Sheba and Audre Lorde, which I thought was awesome. I thought it was so awesome. And you know what? I forgot to tell you about all of the decks that I paired with this, with Creative Liberation. So I had showed you last time that I pulled out the Narrative Alchemy Tarot, and I absolutely love this deck paired it with this deck and this one. The three of them go so incredibly well together. And so when I pulled this card, I got a throat chakra card from the Narrative Alchemy. And so that was super cool because the Queen of Sheba and Audre Lorde are known for their words and their eloquent words and their persuasive words and their powerful words. And I just thought that was so cool. So when I combined the Narrative Alchemy Tarot with the Creative Liberation Now deck, it was super fun to see it as like pointing to a part of my body. So I didn't think of it as chakras in the traditional way, like I wasn't trying to like open or close or commune or assess, or like I wasn't thinking about my chakras, but I did think about the body parts that are associated with the chakras. So if I pulled a throat chakra card, I thought about my throat and speaking. If I pulled a third eye card, I thought about my perception and my way of viewing and thinking about the world. I mean, maybe that is saying that I use the chakras. I don't know. Depends on your relationship with the chakras. I have a very limited relationship to the chakras, so I don't know if I did the chakras justice, but it was super cool to take these messages and associate them with a specific part of my body. And then the rainbows totally fit like I thought that they would. Here's an example of a rainbow card. We've got all these versions of this character in a spectrum behind. And so oftentimes the Narrative Alchemy card reflected a color in the card and would sort of bring my eye to that specific part of the card, and that was also really fun. This deck though is very much based on the RWS tradition. Like it seemed pretty well. Okay, so I follow Chrissy on YouTube, and so I already know that Chrissy is quite invested in the Rider-Waite system, Smith system as it is understood today. And whenever I pulled these cards, I could see in my mind's eye the Rider-Waite Smith deck imagery sort of like behind it. Like this was sort of like a layer over top of it, and it would bring my attention to a part of the figure's body part too. So like the card that is the Two of Swords in this deck is a third eye card, which makes sense because that image in the RWS deck has a person with a blindfold on. So of course your attention is like on your eyes and your forehead and that part of your body. So that kind of thing was super fun too. But yeah, because of the RWS nature of this, I was also feeling into the RWS-ness of this deck. And like I've said before, the people who were making this deck were thinking about the Thoth deck. But y'all, the RWS deck and the Thoth deck, they come from the same tradition. They're both, like, sure, Crowley is like a Thelemite and Waite and Smith were Golden Dawn, but in the grand scheme of things, that's all the Western mystery tradition. It's like it's all the same stuff, even if you do your rituals slightly different. Like they're all, it's the same thing, is what I'm saying. So even if today the RWS deck is translated significantly different than the Thoth deck, in my world it's all representative of the same information and content, and so anyways, random side tangent. So because this deck is very RWS-y, it made me see the RWS-ness of the Creative Liberation Now deck, and it got me all excited to obtain the art occultists coloration of the RWS, because I heard on her channel she was talking about how she colored it according to her interpretations of the, like, how the chakras are involved in the card in question. And so at some point, who knows when I'm gonna have this kind of time, but at some point I think it would be so fun to do a comparison video with the Creative Liberation Now deck, the Narrative Alchemy Tarot, and the Art Occultists coloration of the RWS. If that sounds fun to you, definitely let me know in the comments. Okay. Okay. So yes, even though this deck might not be an emphasis for this following month, it was such a hit that it's gonna stick around. It's gonna be for everybody for the Creative Liberation Now deck. Okay, back to looking at the cards I pulled. Another thing that was cool about the Creative Liberation Now deck this last month was it helped me navigate the like stresses of being a content creator and postpartum motherhood. That's sort of a lot to be doing all at once, and juggling. At least for me, I'm the kind of human who likes to do things like all or nothing. So to only post one video to Instagram every month is sort of like nails on a chalkboard or something. Like I so want to make at least 2 videos a month, if not like 4, like once a week, right? Kind of thing. It's just whatever is in me. So to not, and to prioritize my life in a responsible way was quite the feat, and I'm very proud of myself. And this deck, Creative Liberation Now, definitely helped me with that. So when it comes to the suits, I pulled the fewest water cards of all of the suits. Yeah. I did really enjoy how this, when I pulled this card, there was a turtle on the GaiaStar Codex card that I pulled. And y'all, this deck is going to be sticking around. I'm going to be using it with this deck a lot. But I'm not sure how much to talk about it or show it to you, because I don't think it's accessible. I tried to purchase it myself because I'm borrowing this one. This is not even my copy. I'm borrowing it from someone who is not currently using their cards. So who knows when or if they'll want this deck back. But I tried to find it for myself so I wouldn't have to rely on this other person, you know, in case they want their deck back. But I couldn't find it. So if you find it, that's super awesome. You must be really good at finding scarce things. So when it came to air, I pulled the Birth of Air, I pulled 5th Air, I pulled 10th Air, and I pulled the Visionary Dreamer of Air. And once again, the Visionary Dreamer is in place of the Knights or the Princes. And so I had, this card was a duplicate. Got this card twice, and it was one of the ones where I pulled a color from the Narrative Alchemy Tarot, and it made me, it must have been red, because I remember just like getting lost in this little spot right here. And I also really enjoyed how this 10th Air reminds me of the Fool card. It's like the Fool after he's jumped. And this is just fun because I have a baby in my arms right now, And then there's a baby on my cards. I also really enjoy this 5th air. This was my only 5 card that I received. In this deck, it talks about the 5th air as like a battlefield that has been fallow for a while and is becoming fertile. Just fantastic imagery. Okay, so I think I pulled I guess I'm not really sure. Yeah, I guess I pulled the most earth. Yes, okay. I officially feel confident enough to say I pulled the most earth because I pulled this one twice. So that makes it the most. Okay, so I got, here, this is not in any kind of order. Sorry about that. We've got 3rd, 4th, 7th, 9th, 10th. This card took me a moment to figure out what's happening. This is a lizard hatching out of an egg. Just in case you were lost, because I was. I found this card so fun. The 4th Earth, thinking of all of this potential like under the surface, like lava. And oh, okay, so this card was also really fun in that this deck talked about will, which is a really big deal in Western mystery traditions, one's will and one's willpower and all of that. And so this talked about it as the will flow, like the flow of one's will. And yeah, that just tickled me. And then this card, I got this card twice. So I got 2 minor arcanas twice, and this was the other one. And since I got it twice, I did a lot of thinking on it, and I am now seeing the 7th Earth card as the rest is resistance, as in Trisha Hersey's book, as well as my pleasure activism card, which if you don't know is a reference to Adrienne Marie Brown. So this card now holds a whole slew of super cool meanings for me that it did not before. And this card is fun when we're talking about the rainbows, because the saying for this one is I am the rainbow after the storm. And as you know, the 3rd air card is often like a sort of heartbreak kind of card, or stormy kind of card. There's usually a storm in the background, or oftentimes there's a storm in the background. And yeah, I just thought that was really pretty. And instead of giving you numbers that might not be right, I'm just not going to give you numbers. I will be more on it next time. Completion is perfection. That was my 4 of Wands affirmation. So my major arcana cards were the Hierophant, which is one of my absolute favorites, and I really enjoyed the imagery on this. These right here remind me of the cherubim that sit on the Ark of the Covenant, and that just made me really happy. And I really also enjoy how the death card is very deathy. It's like not it's not like the transformation card or the like sort of fluffing, making death fluffy and soft instead of scary and dark. I like how it's not doing that, but it does have these like embryo situations, so it has this very like composty kind of vibe, which I'm a huge fan of. And then I thought this card was interesting because when I pulled this card, I had been thinking about it, and it's card 13, and the Creative Liberation Now deck has 13 Fools and 13 Multiverses and 13 Sacred Paths. So I thought that was super cool that The death card is, instead of fluffied, it's like sort of emphasized, even though not overtly. Anyways, and then I did not include my fools or my multiverses in my major arcana, just because then you wouldn't have been able to see them all on the screen. But I pulled some of my favorites. This one, I was not familiar with this one already, but it made me so happy. When I read the description, it reminded me of my experience of motherhood, and it pleased me to no end, and I'm gonna read it to you now as soon as I find it, because it pleased me so much. I am the flying, juggling genius fool. Oh, I didn't even read before that it's associated with Rapunzel, which is a really big deal for me. Rapunzel has been a lifelong companion for me. Take leaps of faith, embrace self-saviorship. And then in the parentheses, save your ship, all one word. Experience wholeness through nothingness. Hold stillness in chaos. So yes, that is what my experience of motherhood is. Hold stillness in chaos. Free flying. And so it was supportive and affirming to pull this card. And then I pulled this card twice. So this was my major arcana double, and this card is one of my absolute favorite multiverses because it is the always open crossroads. So you may notice this, a lot of these phrases and words are sort of play on words, like always, and then all ways, like all directions are open, and like always, all the time. So it's spelled all directions, but it's phrased all ways. So you think of the other one too. Anyways, it's brilliant. They're wordsmiths. It comes through. And I'm crossroads storyteller. So always open crossroads resonates, as well as the meaning behind it also felt a lot like motherhood, where like you're holding intensity, like there's a conclusion and the next thing hasn't begun yet, and there's like all of this there's all this active energy that's like ready and available, but is not, like, the person holding that energy is not yet ready to act in the new direction. So it's like all this intensity, but you don't have to worry because you can go any direction with it. Anyways, loved it. Okay, so I wanted to do one last look at the cards I pulled twice, and then move on. So we've got the weightless universe, seventh earth, and the visionary dreamer of air, which is fun because we've got a major arcana, a minor arcana, and a court card. I guess I don't have anything else to say about it just now. Oh, you know what is cool though? I feel like these orbs reflect these orbs. And sort of reflect these orbs. Ooh, that's fun. Excuse me. And we've got wings here and wings here. Anyways, I think I might need to look at that longer to, maybe I'll make some kind of statement for my month or something like that. We'll see. So yeah, those are the cards I pulled. I found them so fun. So in addition to helping me navigate motherhood and YouTube content creatorhood, this deck was super fun in that I noticed a whole bunch of like Afrocentric or African American centric imagery and or philosophy or emphasis on the like historical figures like Audre Lorde. I really enjoyed this Egyptian eye. I don't know if it's Horus's or Ra's, because I'm not that versed in it, and how alchemy is spelled Kem, which makes me think of Egypt and the fertility of the Nile, which was a super fun association to make. There's all sorts of brilliant, beautiful, melanated bodies in this deck. There's like clearly more African melanated bodies. Yeah, it's just fun to start pulling out those sort of inspirational threads, in addition to finding some more occult philosophy kinds of things, like the will content that I was talking about and the will flow. And yeah, the rainbows theme was super fun to keep pulling on. Even the cards that didn't have explicit rainbows, like this card has an explicit rainbow right here, but this card, it had, if you look at all of the butterflies, there's a blue one and a yellow one and an orange one and a red one and a green one. So, you know, even when there isn't a explicit rainbow, there's some less explicit rainbows. This was also a super fun card. This is like a centaur that is midway shape-shifting. Yeah, the images are super unique and interesting to and sometimes really complex, like especially the major arcana cards. Like there's so much going on in this card, you could just sit here and stare at it for a while, which is super fun. So yeah, I definitely look forward to studying this deck more. I'm thinking that maybe at some point this deck might become my hashtag workhorse deck. We'll see. We'll see. Oh, I forgot to mention, I found myself, in addition to paring things down, I found myself a nice literal container to help me contain my decks and my plans, which is good because right now with my current lifestyle, I'm like, you can't just lay things out in the house because the toddler gets into it, and as soon as I stash something in one room, I need it in the other room. So this Tupperware is gonna be the shit. So I told you how much I enjoyed playing with the 3 decks: Creative Liberation Now, the GaiaStar Codex, and the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. But I'm not really positive how to pull them like in a big spread. I've just been pulling one of each card once a day, which was awesome. But I want to see if I can experiment and see if there's a way to do a larger spread, so that if I did want to make the Creative Liberation Now a workhorse deck and I wanted to use the deck for other people, I could consider also using the Narrative Alchemy Tarot and the GaiaStar Codex with it. So I pulled out my spread crafters. I have the other expansion pack also, but these are the 2 that I want to explore, and we'll see if I explore them. They're here if I have some free time and I'm available for them, and if I'm not available for them, they can hang out and be ready for next time. And these are by Kimberly, but her name on social media is Fables Den. So if you're looking for her in those decks, you can find them that way. Okay, so I mentioned this deck last time, and I am already so much farther, this video is so much longer than I thought it was going to be, so I'm not going to talk about this deck too much this time. we'll explore if I have time for it next time. And I guess my update regarding this deck is I practiced my LBRP. For clarity, for context, I stopped practicing my LBRP when I got pregnant because I was so easily lightheaded that intoning was a little bit too much for me. And so that's part of why this deck is here, is because I want to get back into doing my theurgy. And so, like I said last time, this deck is inspiring me to think about my watchtower visualizations a little bit more exciting and uniquely and etc. So the last thing that is new for this month is I shared with you how life has been a little hard. Probably mentioned it one too many times. And so instead of doing something that's like for study purposes or comparisons or learning or whatever, I'm going to go to my most comforting deck, which I think is super awesome because this is the deck and the only deck I had, or this was my primary deck that I had and was using when I lived at the community where I met Amani and became acquainted with this deck. So when I was living in this community of 13 individuals and someone would have a hard time and they would want to do tarot with me, this was the deck we used. So it feels extra special to use this deck with the Creative Liberation Now deck. And I did a whole month of daily draws on YouTube, like posts showing the cards I pulled, and that was so much fun. And I'm going to take a break from that for right now. So if you see my pulls with this deck, it will be in my next video. I'll like insert them in the video, but otherwise just know they go well together, at least in feeling. I think they probably go together quite well in art also. We'll see how it goes. And those are all my plans. I showed you the books, I showed you the decks. Oh yes, filming plans are I intend to make a like recapping my practice kind of video once a month. And then I have so much desire to make a walkthrough video, and I know the Liberation Now Tarot is coming out soon, and I really want to unbox that and compare it with the Creative Liberation Now, because I think that's the closest deck I've seen on the market to the Creative Liberation Now deck. I mean, there's a bajillion things I want to make, but those are probably like the most likely things to be made in the near future. So last thing going in my bucket is my Shem Hamifarash decks that names or name of God that I'm gonna include in my theurgy. But yeah, that's everything. That's what I'm doing. I hope to see you next time for my next update, and so much love.